if a man would take back his wife after she's already married?
It's a
Love?
it's a love. Yeah. Thank you. Today we're going to start Chaf Chesed Beis, 3 lines from the bottom of Rabbi Yishmael. Correct? From the studies that we're holding. And
That's correct.
okay, we thank Hashem we're able to learn Torah every day. In the course of our learning, we should have a basic English. So what we mentioned was that Rabbi Akiva says 3 times in the Torah the word benitma. One was to tell me that this Sota woman, right, suspected adulteress was forbidden to her husband. One was to tell me that the suspected adulteress was forbidden to the paramour, to the boil. And the third one was to tell me that the suspected adulteress could not eat truma anymore. Comes along Rabbi Yishmael and says that for kahuna, I don't need a pasuk, I have a kal v'chaimer. What's the kal v'chaimer? Kal v'chaimer was that if a divorcee, was allowed to eat truma, because she goes back to her father's house. Her father was a kohen. She can still eat truma, and she's prohibited to marry a kohen. So someone that's prohibited from eating truma for sure should be prohibited from marrying a kohen. That was this kal v'chaimer. Gemara asked what we asked. We asked this in passing when we were learning this. Rabbi Yishmael's comment to Rabbi Akiva, he says, "Amar Rabbi Akiva truma." Rabbi Akiva wasn't talking about what Rabbi Yishmael was talking about. Rabbi Akiva said, "I have a pasuk that teaches me that the suspected adulteress, the Sota woman, is not allowed to eat truma." Kahuna, and he starts arguing with him about kahuna. He wasn't even talking about kahuna. Can a suspected adulteress marry a kohen? We don't know that she's really guilty. We don't know that she's a zayna. Is she? Let's say. What would happen here is like this: he warns her not to be secluded with so and so, and we have witnesses that she was secluded. We don't know what happened in that room. All of a sudden, the husband dies. Now this woman is a widow. Widow is mutter to a kohen. Can she go and marry a kohen? So Rabbi Yishmael says for sure not. Have a kal v'chaimer from a gerusha. If a gerusha, which is allowed to eat truma, can't marry a kohen, so this woman that's prohibited to eat truma for sure can't marry a kohen. But Rabbi Akiva wasn't even talking about that. So did Rabbi Akiva say that she can, yes, marry a kohen? Well, how did that come up? The Sue. Another question is, the Rabbi Akiva kahuna minale. How does Rabbi Akiva himself know that? Because Rabbi Yishmael was saying that there's a kal v'chaimer and I don't need a pasuk. That's what it sounds like. And Rabbi Akiva was saying that I have a pasuk for it. That's what it sounds like. But we didn't see that anywhere. Maybe what we'll say is that I don't need a special pasuk of enitma to tell me that a suspected adulteress can't marry a kohen. Why? I know it already. What do I know it? Because the rule is that a kohen is not allowed to marry a zayna. Zayna is in modern Hebrew is a prostitute, but according to the Torah, a zayna is any woman that had relations with someone that was forbidden to. She doesn't have to be a prostitute with a business card. She's any woman that had relations with any man that was forbidden to her. It's automatically a zayna. Well, at least there's a machlekes about that. But let's say she had relations with a non-Jew. Okay, that's it. She's considered a zayna according to the Torah. So the translation of zayna is not the modern Hebrew. Has a different translation. Well, if that's the case, then I don't need a special pasuk to tell me that a suspected adulteress isn't allowed to marry a kohen, because I have a rule that the suspected adulteress is considered a zayna already. let's say that she doesn't need a pasuk because she's a zaina. Why? Because what's the rule of the Sota? We consider her already a zaina, even though we don't know for sure. But a suffix is considered like a vaday. Suffix means a doubt. The fact that she could have done this, we assume that yes, we take it like the worst possible situation. They can't have relations afterwards, but that doesn't tell me that she's a zaina. But what tells me that she's a zaina is that she's prohibited to eat truma. How do we know this? Okay, Rashi goes through this thing. It says like this. The daughter of a Kayan that goes and marries a Kisiel Ishtar, she marries a stranger, which means a Yisrael. She marries someone that she can't marry. She can't eat truma. Gemara learns that it's referring to someone that she was prohibited from marrying. Kisiel Ishtar is more than just the Yisrael. It means someone that she's prohibited from marrying. Now, the only thing is that how do I know that means that she just had relations with him? Maybe it means that she had to marry him. So Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that any forbidden marriage is not even considered a marriage. So how did he even call it a marriage? It can't be. It must be the whole problem is just the relations. That's the case. So Kisiel Ishtar means that if she had relations with someone that she wasn't allowed to, she can't eat truma anymore. The fact that she can't eat truma already tells me that she's a zaina. If she's a zaina, then she can't marry a kayan. So the same rule would apply. So I don't need a pasuk. The only problem is it's a suffix. But we consider the suffix like a vaday. We say she can't eat truma. We also say that if the husband would die right then, she, as a widow, she still won't be able to marry a kayan because we consider her a zaina. Now the Gemara asks, but if that's the case, how did I know that she can't eat truma? I had a pasuk of vinitma that she can't eat truma. But 1 second, why do you need a pasuk of the vinitma? El Rabbi Kiva, I'm sorry. Truma nami leiti ba'ikra. Then you shouldn't even need a pasuk for truma. Shreyasa basafik kazaina, because you already considered her zaina. So why do you need?
Would this question be both on Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel?
So Rabbi Shmuel doesn't have a pasuk. Oh, you're saying this last one regarding truma?
Truma leiti ba'ikra.
No. So we'd say like this: that this concept of kahuna leitzarich kra is a way of telling me that why doesn't Rabbi Akiva have a pasuk to tell me that she can't marry a kayan? Because leitzarich kra. But if leitzarich kra, then I don't need a pasuk for truma either.
Okay, so that would be on both of them.
And Rabbi Shmuel says I don't need a pasuk for kuna because I have a kal v'chaimer, not because I don't need a pasuk because I have a kal v'chaimer. But for truma, I still need a pasuk.
You don't even need. No, this is the kal v'chaimer. What is
Rabbi Shmuel's kal v'chaimer is that if a gerusha that's allowed to eat
why does
truma,
he need the kal v'chaimer if we have this?
because maybe Rabbi Shmuel doesn't hold up the whole concept of havaya. Maybe he holds that she has to get married to someone else. But maybe that's only
apply that one as well.
That's suffix zaina kazaina regarding what? That maybe it's only that she's prohibited to her husband. How do you know it's regarding truma? And maybe he holds that regarding truma, the only time that she's prohibited from eating truma is not if she has relations with someone, but if she marries him. Because kisiya is possibly relations only according to Rabbi Akiva that holds that there's no such thing as a marriage to someone that she's prohibited to. There's no marriage. You don't need to get marries a non-Jew. You need to get no. So it must when it says you can't if she marries someone, well, it can't be married. It must mean just relations. But that's only according to Rabbi Akiva that holds that in Kiddushin Taifsin B'chai B'lavin that that there's no such thing as a marriage by a negative prohibition. But according to Rabbi Shmuel, maybe yes. So maybe we don't have this. Yeah, I'm following Rashi. Yeah.
So the basis of this discussion is that a suffix zona is a zina.
There's nothing, right? Yeah, the basis of this is,
The suffix zina is treated as a zina.
yeah. Yeah, that would be an answer. But how do we know that we don't that the suffix zina can't marry a kayan? How does Rabbi Akiva know it? Because we know a suffix is like a vade, and that automatically she's a zina. Zina can't marry a kayan. If that's the case, the Gemara says, and why do I don't need the pasuk of a nitma from by truma, because it's the same thing. Suffix is like a vade. Ella, the Gemara answers, the Rabbi Akiva Ba Kroi Ksivi. According to Rabbi Akiva, I actually have 4 psukim. I have a nitma, and I have 2 nitmas, and I have 1 vinitma. It's like there's 3 types of people: those that know how to count and those that don't. So here we have 4 psukim. 2 say nitma, and 1 of them says vinitma. That's supposed to be 4. Why? Because the third one that says nitma has a vav in it, and that extra vav is considered an extra. So what we do is like this. According to Rabbi Akiva, the 4 psukim would be chad labal. One, that this suspected adulteress is not allowed to continue living with her husband. Chad labayil. If she gets divorced from her husband, she can't marry the paramour. That's forbidden. They can't get married. Chad lakahuna. That would have to be a case where she didn't drink, of course.
Right. Is there such a thing as like a perpetual suffix? Like, because we mentioned earlier that she could decide not to drink, even though she could say that she's innocent.
Right. So, and when that would continue, that would be the suffix that we never know, and therefore she would be prohibited. Chad kahuna. One is that she can't marry a kayan, even if the husband dies, she becomes a widow. The chad chuma, and another one of the vav, I guess, would be for truma. Okay, so that's how he has 4. Now, Rabbi Yishmael doesn't need 4. Why? Because Rabbi Yishmael had the kal v'chaimer. Rabbi Yishmael plus a krai ksivi. Chad labal, chad labayil, chad lachuma. So kuhun asi b'kal v'chaimer. That's what's going on. Basically, the difference between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael is the classic difference of, can you darshan just letters? And Rabbi Akiva says you can even darshan every crown on a letter, and darshan the letter vav. And Rabbi Yishmael says no. We had from Rabbi Yishmael already that Dibra Torah Klashim B'nai Adam, the Torah speaks the language of man, and any time that something gets repeated, it gets repeated only for one detail. It doesn't mean that everything else that's repeated, you can start to learn things from it. Extrapolate. Okay. The Gemara asks a question. Rabbi Yishmael, we said that the pasuk of the 3 psukim of Benitma coming to teach me that she's forbidden to her husband, she's forbidden to the paramour, and she can't eat truma. And if she can't eat truma, then we know automatically that she can't marry a kain from a kal v'chaimer. The kal v'chaimer was that if a divorcee is allowed to eat truma, but it's prohibited to a kain, so this woman that's prohibited to truma, for sure is prohibited to marry a kain. Okay. Now the Gemara asks, how do you know the pasuk is coming to teach me that this woman is not allowed to eat truma? And then I have a kal v'chaimer, Dilma, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the pasuk is telling me that she can't marry a kayan. What's going to be with truma? Truma shaya. Maybe she's permitted to eat truma. How do you know? Maybe I don't have maybe there is no kal v'chaimer. Maybe I just have psukim. Gemara says, Amalach. Gemara answers that mistabra dumya debalu bayal. I have an option here of what to learn. I have an option. I have 2 things I know for sure. I know that she's forbidden to the husband. I know that she's forbidden to the paramour. What about the other two, truma or marrying a kayan. So the scenario where she would possibly be allowed to marry a kayan would only be if the husband died. Otherwise, she'd be a divorcee. And if she's not a divorcee, then she's a married woman. She can't marry anyone. So the only possibility is that the husband died. Truma is even while the husband's alive. Let's say the husband's a kayan. Is she allowed to eat the husband's truma? We said no. So what's the rule of her marrying? When you line up these cases, when are they taking place? So continuing to be with the husband, of course, the husband's still alive. To marry the paramour, that could be when the husband's alive as well.
What about her kids?
Yes,
I
the
thought
wife.
she could eat truma for kids.
Yeah, but she actually can't because she's considered not part of this because of the relationship she has. So the marrying the paramour is also when the husband's alive. Eating truma is when the husband's alive. The only one out is marrying a kayan is when the husband is not alive. So the Rabbi Shmuel says like this: Mistabra, it's logical that dumya the baal ubayal, that the third case, which we don't know what the third case should be. Should it be truma or should it be marrying a kayan? It's that it should be similar to the first two. What were the first two? Ma baal ubayal mechaim, just like marrying the paramour, or continuing to live with the husband, is while the husband's still alive, of course. Afchumanami mechayim. So what we're coming to learn from the pasuk, the third pasuk would be truma. So the three psukim, nitma, and vinitma, is coming to teach me she's prohibited to the husband, she's prohibited to the paramour, and she's prohibited to eat truma. This is in Rabbi Shmuel. And how do we know that she's not allowed to marry a kayan? That's from a kavachaymer. But the pasuk is not teaching me kuna, because that would be only after the husband died.
So, is that enumerated or?
That's the three times. No, those are three mentions of the word nitma in the section of Sota. Rabbi Kiva said there was four because he uses the verb in it. Right. No, never. That's what we're saying. But since even while the husband's, when the husband's alive, the husband's alive, that rule applies. It applies after he dies also. But just like she's forbidden to the husband while he's alive or while he's dead, right? She's prohibited to the paramour even while he's alive, truma even while he's alive, and even while he's dead. But the marrying a kayan would only be possible after he dies, and then we say that it's prohibited. But the scenario would only be after he dies. So we said that wasn't like, they show the kids pictures and they say which one doesn't match. They have a donut and a pizza and a fire truck and a lollipop. Which one doesn't fit? So the one that didn't fit over here was the marrying the kayan.
Why does this kavachaymer work if, suffix, the custom was a suffix designer, but then after that you can go back to her husband?
After she drinks. Yeah, well, after she drinks, she can go back to her husband, she can marry a kayan, and she can marry the
So why
paramour.
don't you say that that's not a kavachaymer? This one, she has an opening to go back. So how are you going to do that to something?
No, all of them
You
she
can.
could go back. After she drinks, they're all mutter.
But you're trying to teach that when you say about the kavachaymer, you're saying, what if Sota they made suffix designer? But for sure, when there is no suffix, and for sure you wouldn't need it.
No, the kavachaymer was that if a Sota, if a divorcee is allowed to eat truma, but she can't marry a kayan, so this woman that's not allowed to eat truma for sure can't marry a kayan.
That's no good.
Why?
Because the fact is that a Sota could go back to marry her husband. So it's a temporary
But
thing.
she can also eat truma.
What?
She can also eat truma. So that whole case of when she goes back is not part of the kavachaymer. The kavachaymer is only when she can't eat truma.
I could argue.
You follow? We're only dealing with this scenario. Only dealing with this one scenario. We're not dealing with when you find that she was really mutter. In this status,
But
being
you're
a
saying
saita.
that she's a chaimer. You're saying if the kal.
Yeah, we're saying that she's
She's
chamer.
not a chaimer, that she has a thought that's more kal.
But then that's
than the chaimer.
we don't consider that as part of this,
Why?
because that's not that status. We're dealing with a certain status of a saita. The saita, you're saying, but maybe
Later on,
yeah, but
she
that's
has
not.
a much more kal than the chaimer. Kal v'chaimer means you take something that's easy. And you see that this one is more strict, so
Right.
the E is okay, fine, kal v'chaimer.
Right. But in this situation, the situation that she's in, there is no kal.
Going.
Okay.
No.
So kal is a leniency. Okay. Rabbi Akiva. What does Rabbi Akiva do? I mean, there's a kal v'chaimer here. He says, well, dumya debal ubayal lesle. He doesn't say that it needs to be similar. You know, he's willing to say that the three verses could be the three benitmas could have been Echad Labal, one that she's prohibited to the husband, one that she's prohibited to the paramour, and the other one that she's prohibited to the kahuna, to kahuna. It doesn't match. He says, okay, that doesn't matter. And V'inami Yislay, and if the pasuk is coming to teach me truma, let's say, as we're asking, why does Rabbi Akiva need the pasuk to teach me that it's prohibited for kahuna? If Rabbi Shmuel has a very good kal v'chaimer, so he would respond to that. Milsa dasi b'kal v'chaimer tarch b'kasav l'kra. He says that doesn't bother me, because even something that could be learned from a kal v'chaimer doesn't matter, because the pasuk sometimes still spells it out clearly, even though I could have learned it with a kal v'chaimer. That's his opinion. Okay. It's good. We have a new Gemara here. Following Gemara, it's not the hard part yet. Pretty difficult.
We want to go for
Coming up. Rav Gidl Rav. Rav Gidl was a student of Rav. He says in the name of his teacher, Rav. Says, Davar sheyesh beidas lishal, ve'im beidas lishal, mihai kra nafka. He says, we learned before like this, that a saita is a doubt. We don't know what happened. And we say that she's prohibited to her husband. So we say that a saita is considered tamid. We'll say that in a situation where she was secluded. Now, that situation where she's secluded, we call that a Rosh Hashanah. Doesn't have to do with Rosh Hashanah of Shabbos. It has to do with Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't have to do with if there's. You got it?
I think so. It doesn't have to do with the laws of Shabbos if there's a string around the park or whatever. It's not an Erev. It has to do with simply if there were other people there. We're borrowing the term Rosh Hashanah, we're using it for a different scenario. She's secluded, that's called Rosh Hashanah. Now, if there would be another person there, 3 people there, then it's not called Rosh Hashanah. It's only when there's 2. 3 people, the Shomer, it makes it not a Rosh Hashanah in this scenario. So we said that if you have a suffix tuma in a Rosh Hashanah, then we say that it's tamei. Where do we know that from? From Saita. Saita is called tamei, and she's in Rosh Hashanah, 2 people only. So too, any tuma in Rosh Hashanah is tamei. Gemara says that 1 second. We would only say that she's tamei if you're able to ask someone there what happened. So, for example, if there's a suffix, if someone touched the sheretz, so we say that it's tamei. But if there's a suffix, if a piece of meat touched the sheretz in the Rosh Hashanah, then there was no one to ask. I don't say that it's tamei. It's only davar sheyesh beidas lishal, only something that you can actually ask. Just like over there, the truth is you can ask this one and that one. You can ask the woman and the man what happened here. When it comes to the food or the sheret, I only have to ask one of them because the other one is either dead, right, or sherets or whatever. But I has to be talking about a person came in contact with the sheret. It's not just food coming in contact.
The Rishus Yachid just refers to, it's not referring to a witness. It's referring, I didn't really quite hear what.
The Rishus Yachid meant that there was only two people in a closed room, not three people.
Okay, does that include like the victim, the paramour, and someone else? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we weren't calling her a victim.
Oh.
Victim sounds like it
21st
was
century.
against her will.
Uh-huh.
I was just gonna say in modern terms, if there's suspicion, so let's say a detective comes in, it's either circumstantial evidence, which you can't ask any questions, it's just that,
Right,
or there's a person of interest who you can interrogate.
right.
So
Someone that
that's
you can
kind of-
interrogate. That's what it means. Stage with dash the shawl. Someone that you can interrogate.
Extrapolate it. Made by the bell. Got it in, got it under.
Okay. So Rab Gidel says that I know you learned that before from Sota, this concept, but Rab taught me from a pasuk. The same thing he taught me from a pasuk. What does he say? I learned it from a pasuk. The pasuk says, that meat that touches anything that's tamei should not be eaten. Something that's definitely tamei, you can't eat. A safek tamei, a safek tar yoichal. But if there's a doubt, then you can eat it. Let's go further. Ema seifa, another part of this brisa says, "V'habasar in the meat, kol tar yoichal basar." Anyone that's pure is allowed to eat this meat. Talking about the meat of a shlamim. V'adei tar hu yoichal basar. Only if he's definitely tar can he eat the meat. A safek tamei, safek tar. But if he's a doubt, lo yoichal, then he can't eat it. So we have a contradiction between the implication from the first pasuk to the implication of the second part. First, the implication from the first one was that if it's a doubt, then it's not considered tamei. The implication from the second part is that if it's a doubt, it is considered tamei. So he says, "Elalav shmamina." How do we resolve this contradiction of implications? It says, "Kan sheish bidas lishol, kan shein bidas lishol." It says like this. When it says kol, the pasuk said, "Kol tar yoichal basar." Any person that's pure is allowed to eat the meat. That's talking about a person. Yesh bidas lishol. If he's not pure, or if he's a doubt, then he's not allowed to. Because yesh bidas lishol, anyone that could be interrogated, if there's a doubt, is tamei. What's the other part of the pasuk? It says, "V'habasar shiga b'chol tamei." The flesh touches something that's tamei. Over there's no one to interrogate. So only if it touches something that's definitely touched something that's tamei. But if it's not for sure, then it's going to be tar because there's no one there to interrogate. So Rav Gidel brought it from a pasuk, and we had it before from Sota.
So this is another Kal B'chomer?
It's a implication from a pasuk that tells us that there's a difference between davar sheish beidas l'shol and ein beidas l'shol. Someone that could be interrogated or not. If it could be interrogated, that means if it was the human intervention, there's some human involvement there. So then we say that it's tamei by a doubt, and if there's no human involvement, then we say that it's tar. We need both of them. If we would just learn from Rav Gidel Amarav, from the Psukim, I would say that both cases are going to be in Rishus Yachid or Rishus Rabim. Well, not both. It's going to be tamei in Rishus Yachid. It's going to be tamei in Rishus Rabim if there's human involvement. The yesh bidas l'shol. I don't have any reference in that pasuk to where the suffix took place.
So eventually they're going to apply that to the Sota.
So we say if it would only teach me davar sheyesh bidas l'shol by the psukim, then I would think that there would be tamei in Rishus Rabim as well. So therefore, it comes to tell me Sota. So it's Migmar Misaita. I have to use Sota to tell me that it's only in Rishus Yachid. And now let's go further.
Ve'imi saita, if it only said saita, so hava amina adika das negeo umagia. I would have thought that you need the one that it's only tame if you have both humans' involvement, both the one that's touching and the one that's being touched are possible to be interrogated, because by the Saita I have a man and a woman, which both of them could be theoretically interrogated.
You need 3 people for surrounding.
Yeah, but here we're talking about with the Saita, it's only B'Shus Yachid.
Right.
Now we're saying, but if it would, I would only have the laws of Saita, which teach me that it only applies in B'Shus Yachid. I would have thought that it only applies if both the person that's touching and the person that's being touched, if it's dealing with people. But I would need 2 sides that need to be interrogated. But let's say there's a question if a person touched the sheretz. Let's say that the rule doesn't apply. So it comes along Rav Gidl Amarav that tells me when a person touches a sheretz, because there's one side over there of human involvement that could be interrogated, that's already considered tamei. Well, you can't talk to the sheretz.
But by Sota, we only technically interrogate one.
I know. We're not doing by the Saita, even if we're not interrogating, even if we don't care what they say. It doesn't matter. We're not. It doesn't have to do with interrogating or not.
So
It has
then
to do with
how are
has
we
to do
using
with
that
the
as the
capability.
argument?
The capability of being interrogated has to be a human. Right?
Potential.
Okay.
It's a weird argument, the potential to interrogate both, when we really don't interrogate either.
Right.
So, and you're making an argument for that,
Great use,
making an argument of some substantial.
great use of your hands on discussion.
What?
You were doing great use of your hands. You were
No,
really emphasize your point.
understand that.
You're
You
correct.
understand my question?
Yeah.
You understand my question?
Okay.
You don't like my question? I think it's a good question. Okay, sure.
I concur.
Don't be so intimidated.
Okay.
He's big in it.
The next Gemara. Next Gemara is considered a hard Gemara.
Uh-oh. Time for bathroom.
Yeah, if anyone wants to take a break. Okay. In the Mishnah we learned that on that day, on the day that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah took over the yeshiva, so Rabbi Akiva taught that any earthenware vessel that something falls into it, that anything, that's tamei, that something falls into it, it becomes tamei. But not only does it become tamei, but it becomes tamei to the extent that it can even make something else tamei. So the way it would work is like this: the earthenware vessel becomes a rishon l'tuma. See, in tuma you have usually you have like 3 levels. You have an avatama. Av means the father of tuma. You have a rishon. That's the first offspring. Then you have a sheni, which is like a grandson, second offspring. Father, son, grandson, right? Av, rishon, sheni. What's the av over here?
So you
Because I have a
like,
sheretz.
Yeah, sheretz.
Sheretz falls into an oven. The oven becomes a rishon. Comes in a loaf of bread into that. Because it's inside the vessel at the same time, it becomes a sheni. Rabbi Akiva teaches that sheni, that loaf of bread, can now touch truma and make truma puzzle. There's 2 words here that we can use.
Wow.
There's tamei. Tamei means that it's so tamei, so impure that it can even make something else impure. Puzzle means that it becomes impure, but it stops there. Okay, so
the challah, that in the example you gave, it's in the oven. It can't make anything. You're saying that it could also make truma. If it
Truma.
touches
truma can become tuma. All right.
But that would be a third.
That would be a
offspring.
third. That would be a great grandson, right? That's what Rabbi Akiva taught. And Rabbi Yeshua comments on this. He says, who will take off the dirt from your eyes? Rabbi Yechim and Zakkai, you said that in the future that we're going to say that a third does not become tamei. There is no such thing as a third becoming tamei. Now, I have to point out that what happened with Rabbi Akiva was that he said that it would apply even not to truma. And Rabbi Yechim and Zakkai said that it's going to be tahar even in truma. And we have like this middle thing that truma yes and not truma no. Okay, now The Gemara says like this. Any earthenware vessel. He learned that it says, because it doesn't say tummy there, it says yitma. That means that it will even make tummy. This is a question on what Rabbi Yeshua commented, that we don't have a verse from the Torah. We don't have a verse from the Torah that it's tummy. But that's what Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai said, that in the future we're going to say that it's going to be tahar even for truma. So obviously you don't have a verse from the Torah. So if you don't have a verse from the Torah, then why was it tummy even for truma? Amar Rav Yehuda Marav. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav. Now it's another student of Rav, right? Before we had Rav Gidel, now we have Rav Yehuda. He says, "Mina Torah ein lai, but midin kal v'chomer yesh lai." I don't have a pasuk in the Torah that tells me that truma should become tummy, should become pasul by a shlishi. I don't have a pasuk in the Torah, but I have a kal v'chomer that it should be. And in the future, someone's going to say that kal v'chomer is not good, and therefore, that would be the background to Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai. And now we say truma's tummy, and in the future, someone's going to come and say that it's not, that it's going to be tar.
Future is Rabbi Akiva. Who's the future?
It doesn't say. It says it's going to be a later generation where there'll be matar.
Let's see.
Okay,
Can't be late. Rabbi Akiva is a ton. Gemara.
right.
So you can't
Just
go back
testing
on
you.
it.
Well, what's the kal v'chomer? Kal v'chomer goes like this. Matvol yaim shemot b'chulin paisel b'truma. Kikasheni shepasel b'chulin and edin she'aser shlishi b'truma. Matvol yaim is someone that was tummy. Let's say it was a carry or a zav or whatever. He went to the mikveh. Maybe touched the sheret. We'll see further. There's a few options for this. But he goes to the mikveh. He only becomes totally pure that evening. So the first Mishnah in Brachas, when do we recite Shema in the evening? When the kohen is allowed to eat the truma. Why? Because he went to the mikveh during the was tummy. He went to the mikveh during the day, and he has to wait until the evening in order to eat the truma. So, a tful yaim, this person that went to the mikveh, he's waiting for the day to end for him to be totally pure to eat truma. If he touches chulin during that time, it's perfectly fine. However, if he touches truma during that time, he makes it tummy, makes it pasul. So with tful yaim, on one hand, is a very lenient thing. On the other hand, because chulin is perfectly fine for him, it doesn't make it chulin. Chulin is regular mundane food, regular food in Publix. Regular food, it's not truma. Regular food is pure. A tful yaim touch. He went to the mikveh, he walks out of the mikveh, dripping wet, touches the food. There's no problem with it. It's not tummy. He was a tar person. He went to the mikveh already. It has regular mundane food.
No truma at all.
No, you would have to get from that would be from people's houses. They would separate the truma. Okay. Now,
So are you saying that prior to going to the mikveh, he's the equivalent of a shlishi?
before he goes to the mikveh, he's either he's an avatam. Yeah. He's about carry.
Yeah.
Grandfather.
Still on the.
So he could touch, but he goes to the mikveh. Now he's could be he's a rishon because maybe he's a rishon because he touched the sheretz. Whatever the case is, goes to the mikveh. Now, on one hand, chulin is perfectly. There's no significance to chulin. When it comes to truma, it makes it possible. So if that's the case, where something that has no significance for chulin can still make truma possible. So let's take something that does have a significance to chulin. For sure should make truma possible. Kikar sheni. What's the kikar sheni? The loaf of bread that was the sheni. Why? The loaf of bread that went into the oven. It was perfectly fine. The oven was a rishon. It's a kikar. When it goes into the oven, it becomes a kikar sheni. Was it truma or chulin? It was regular chulin, mundane food, and it becomes a sheni. Shepasul b'chulin. It's considered tamei. in a dinshi asher shlishi b'truma, for sure should be able to make a shlishi tummy. Now, it's a little catch over here. That's a slight problem because the Tful Yaim touches chulin, it's perfectly fine. He touches truma, he makes it possible. We say, oh, if that's the case, now kikar sheni. What exactly is a kikar sheni? It's something that came in contact with the rishon. Over here, that would be the oven. The oven was the rishon, right? Or the sheretz would have been the av. The oven would be the rishon. The kikar sheni is now going a step further than what we got from the Tful Yaim. The Tful Yaim wasn't doing shlishis. The Tful Yaim was just making something possible. How do you know if that's a shlishi? How do you turn that into a shlishi? Maybe the kikar. How do you know the kikar sheni is able to make a shlishi? So Rashi says, I know sometimes a kal v'chomer you have to stop it. You can't take a kal v'chomer further than what you know originally. You know, if a weak person can lift up 10 pounds, so a strong person for sure can lift up 15 pounds. That you can't say. You can only say a strong person for sure can lift up 10 pounds. You can't go any further than where you. It's like the water thing. You can't go any higher than where you started. So over here also, how can you take it into a shlishi when you never had a shlishi by the Tful Yaim? It says no. Since I have a kal v'chomer, where I have this kal v'chomer from, I have a tradition somehow that there's a kal v'chomer. And if I don't say that I can take it a step further, then I lose the whole kal v'chomer. So therefore, I'm gonna ignore the rule in Hebrew. This is called dayil of amen adin lias kanida. That's the Gemara term. You can never take it further than where you started from. But over here, I will take it a step further. Okay. The Gemara says, I have a problem with the kal v'chomer. What's the problem? The fact, you see, the way I ruin a kal v'chomer is like this. I said a weak person can lift 10 pounds. For sure, the strong person can lift 10 pounds. You should know that that weak person wasn't so weak. He looks weak, but really that guy was a Olympic something, whatever. Wasn't so weak. So the way I ruined the kal v'chomer is like this. You thought that the Tful Yaim is very weak, and nevertheless he's able to make something tamei, make a truma pasal. So for sure a kikar sheni, which is stronger, for sure should make truma pasal. By the way, the Tful Yaim is not so weak. The fact that he makes truma pasal is a din that you don't see that by the other things. Why? Mal Tful Yaim shekein avatuma. The Tful Yaim could be an avatuma. How did he start? Could have been a zav, a balkari, could have been an avatuma. He goes to the mikveh, so it's still lingering. But the kikar, the loaf of bread, is never an avatuma. Okay, for a big problem. The Gemara answers this with Teisei mitful yaim desheretz. I have another option. Let's do the kal v'chomer a little different. Full yaim of a sheretz, that means someone that touches a sheretz, like he can never be an avatam. Sheretz is the avatam. Touch the sheretz, you become a rishon l'tumah. Okay? So now, if a rishon l'tumah, if a rishon l'tumah goes to the mikveh, he's a tful yaim now. If he touches chulin, nothing happens. If he touches truma, oh my gosh, let's look at that. So comes puzzle. So for sure, a kikar sheni, which is a problem for chulin, tamei. For sure, if the kikar sheni touches truma, it's going to be a puzzle. Someone has a question right away. Malatulya in the sheretz, she came b'mina yavatama. By the way, that person that touches sheretz, even though you say that he's so lenient, because when he touches chulin, it's nothing, but you should know that his category is very strict, because a human being could theoretically be an avatuma. In another case, not when he touches the sheretz, but if he touches a mace, he becomes an avatuma. Yeah, or if he's a balkari or a zav, then he'll be avatuma. However, food can never be an avatuma. Can never be a father. So the fact that it makes truma tamei or pasal, that's because its category is a much stricter category. Gemara says klicheres yechia. Well, what we're saying is that the truma is more sensitive, and therefore it could become tamei. It can become puzzle even by your shlishi, even if it's a third step removed. But we're asking, how do you know that? You're trying to learn that from a Kal V'chaimer by saying if this doesn't make chulin tamei. If a tfil yom doesn't make chulin tamei, but it makes truma. So something that makes chulin for sure should make truma even more, right? But each time we're doing this, we're having a problem with that first thing. How do you know that it's really lenient? The fact that it doesn't do truma, that doesn't make chulin tamei. Maybe there's a stringency in it from some other side, right? Chulin doesn't become impure because it's less sensitive to impurity. But nevertheless, this thing that doesn't make chulin impure can make truma impure. So something that could make chulin impure for sure should make truma impure. That's the general concept of this Kal V'chaimer. The only thing is every time we say that it doesn't make chulin impure, but it makes truma, we throw in another variable that throws us off. That other variable tells me, oh, that's the reason why it makes. So the Gemara says, Kli cheres yechiach. We'll prove from Kli cheres. Now, Kli cheres can never become a abatama. The background to this is because an avatama can only be something that could be purified in a mikveh. Since a kli cheres can never be purified in a mikveh, so it can't become an avatama. Kli cheres yechiach. So we'll say that a kli cheres that's a tfil yaim that touches a sheret. It's a tfil yaim. You have to wait for evening, and it will disqualify truma, but not chulin. So for sure, something that will disqualify chulin, which is a kikar sheni, for sure should disqualify truma. There's malak kli cheres shekem etamim ba'aviri. No, there's a variable by kli cheres that's much stricter, because kli cheres, even without touching anything, can make it tamei. Kli cheres is an earthenware vessel, because anything that enters into the earthenware vessel becomes tamei, even without it touching just the airspace. That's a huge stringency. We'll say maybe that's the reason. So tfil yaim yechiach. So we say, but by a tfil yaim, which is another vessel that's waiting to be that can make something tamei even without going into the without the airspace. Only that can make something only with touching, not with the airspace. In other words, that variable is not the factor that makes it tamei. The Gemara says v'chayzer adin, but this seems that it's going to keep revolving. What's the main variable here that's causing the outcome? The strength of this one is not like this one. The strength of this one is not like this one. We have to look for the common factor, the common denominator. The common denominator is that each one of these, whether it's a kli cheres or whether it's a tfil yaim, each one of them will not make chulin tamei, but it will disqualify truma. So kolskin kikar sheni shepaisa b'chulin depaisa b'truma. Okay, let me just do one more line. The vidar acher parach, the future generation that's going to say that we don't have this Kal V'chaimer, what they're going to say is malat tzad hashavashivim sheken yesh b'em tzad chamer. What it's going to do is it's going to say that don't look at the common denominator. Each one of those has its own factor that's causing that to happen. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said chamer like parach. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't ask it like that, didn't have it like that. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he just had the common factor, and that's why for him, truma would be disqualified, but not chulin. And the future generation was going to ruin that Kal V'chaimer by saying it's the common factor. It's the individual factor. Okay, let's leave it over here. We're up to Tanya.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. Shkoyach.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Tzlach Rabba.